Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Safari Mack Explores North America. I'm Safari Mack, your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're still in Yellowstone National Park, where we will finish up today's episode with the American badger, or otherwise, as we know it by its Latin name, of Taxidia taxus. But before we continue, I'd like to make a little announcement. Last week, if you participated in this vote, I asked you all for an opinion on whether we should either A, move on to the next habitat, or B, if we should do one more animal. Thanks to you all, the results are in, and you have decided that we will stay in Yellowstone for one more animal. What will it be, though? Be sure to tune in after next week's episode, in which the animal I will reveal at the end of today's episode. But if you're new to my channel, or if you haven't had a chance to participate in my vote, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that you can join me on future votes as well as future content. Check out my Facebook page for special tips on how you can take conservation action in your own backyard, as well as updates from special projects all over the world. And finally, if you have a question about animals in general, or if there's an animal that you would like me to do in the future, feel free to send me an email, which you will always find the link to down in the description below. But if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's begin with the wild things. First of all, who's ever been to Wisconsin? Let me know down in the comments below. Personally, I haven't gone myself, but I would like to check it out one day in the future. Now, in addition to it being known as America's Dairyland, did you know that it's also called the Badger State? But the reason for this, it has nothing to do with the animal itself. Instead, it actually has to do with these group of people. These are the Badgers, or otherwise known as the Badger Boys. Back in the 1820s, these iron ore workers often carved out little mini homes in the mine so that they could stay close to their work. Now, as I said, it has nothing to do with the animal, but for some reason, the name just stuck, which I thought was pretty interesting. Next wild thing. Last week, I mentioned to you all that badgers are usually a nocturnal species, so you would mostly find these guys active at night. But what I didn't mention to you is that they will also sleep a little bit through the winter months. But now, just because they're sleeping through the winter months, that doesn't mean that they are actually true hibernators. See, true hibernators, like bears, they eat a large amount of food, and then they go to, in a way, not necessarily sleep, but they're kind of in this state of limbo where they're living off of all of their resources until the spring. Badgers don't do that. They're active any time of the year, but in some cases, when there's not enough food to go around, or if food is scarce, they will kind of go into this state of limbo where their body temperature will drop down to 9 degrees Celsius or 48 degrees Fahrenheit, and their heartbeat will only go at half the speed that it usually does for these creatures. But they can only, this is a way of kind of trying to conserve as much energy as possible, but they can't do this for long. They can only do this for a certain amount of days before they have to go out and find food again. So this kind of event is really in a really desperate time. So like really, really desperate. Finally, just like its African cousin, the honey badger, or otherwise known as the raytail, don't judge these creatures too lightly, because they will have confrontations with dogs, wolves, coyotes, and sometimes us, especially when it comes to certain events that can lead to their demise. Now we get into the threats and the problems that they're facing. Now, it's important for us to remember that all creatures on this planet, we love them, and then there are some that we might not love. Some of these animals that we might not love, we may label as pests. Now, it's important for us to remember, these animals don't really mean any harm. They're just only trying to survive, just as we are. But now, here in Yellowstone, thankfully, the Yellowstone Rangers and ranchers that live often on the borders or near or outside of the park, they've reached an agreement to where the animals, if they lose their livestock, then the park often has to find the animal that's causing the problem and put an end to it. It sounds cruel, but this is their way of helping to keep the peace between reintroduction programs like the wolves, as well as keeping the livestock secure for ranchers so that there's no further confrontation. And yet, unfortunately, it's just not enough. Badgers can be seen as problematic for farmers. Like, they will go and sometimes steal birds, and often this may lead to the farmers either poisoning them or shooting them illegally. So unfortunately, there are major problems. Another problem that these creatures face is loss of habitat, as well as habitat fragmentation. And if you've been with me long enough, then you may recall a few other animals that face this problem, in where certain parts of habitat are still protected, but they have no way of kind of getting across to other spots where they can continue their lives, or at least without having major conflicts with humans. Now, of course, as always, we're always trying to take extreme conservation measures to prevent these creatures from having any more problems. So, there is a way that we can coexist with these creatures, but we have to put in a lot of extra hard work. For example, for the farmers, if they're having problems with badgers or other animals that are stealing birds, we're now trying to figure out more effective methods of keeping livestock actually contained and the predators themselves out. So keeping them locked in certain pens, or digging further into the ground with fencing to deter the animals from digging. Another big major influence is wildlife corridors. So if you recall, today, lots of different conservation groups are working to make like passes or bridges on highways. So these bridges that go over the highway will actually help the animals cross over safely. And so therefore we can reduce hit and runs and such, but also the animals can pass through safely without any confrontation. Finally, you can help animals right now in your own home. If you happen to see a badger or any other certain wildlife and you want to report it to a group that can help study the animals and figure out even more effective methods of protecting them, join this website, inaturalist.org. It is a really, really cool website. I've used it a bit myself in the past, where I did a special project on documenting all the animals that I saw in this one special area for a college class back in my youth. It is a major cool one, and I really do encourage you to check it out. I've managed to report many different animals that I've seen, some that I didn't think I'd ever see in where I live nearby. It is a really cool site. This is what can lead you to become a citizen scientist. So you don't have to have a degree, but you can just report what you saw, and then others can help figure out more effective methods of keeping them safe as we continue to get back in touch with the circle of life. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all I have for today. Thank you once again for participating in your votes. And be sure to join me next week as we uncover the lives of the American black bear. And then after that, be sure to join me after the first part of this animals episode for the reveal of the next animal that we will do in Yellowstone National Park before we move on to the next habitat. And so, with that said, folks, until next week, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you all out there.